The space station was always busy. Ships came and went every hour. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through the metal hallways. Some had 4 arms. Some had blue skin. Some floated instead of walking. And among all these strange creatures there were humans too. Humans were not special in this galaxy. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They did not have sharp claws or powerful tails. Most aliens saw humans as simple workers, good for fixing things, good for cleaning, good for jobs that nobody else wanted to do. Hantisu was 17 years old. He worked at his grandfather's repair shop on Orbital Station 7 Kappa. The shop was small and old. The walls were covered with tools and spare parts. The floor was always dirty with oil and metal dust. But Tisu loved this place. He had grown up here, learning how to fix engines and repair broken machines. Today was like any other day. Tisu was sitting on a metal box, eating his lunch. His younger sister Yuna sat next to him. She was 16 and had a sharp tongue. She always said exactly what she was thinking, even when it got her in trouble. Their friend Caillou was there too. He was the same age as Tisu and worked at the loading dock nearby. He was tall and thin, with messy hair that he never bothered to fix. "Did you hear?" Caillou said with his mouth full of food. "Some big military commander is coming to the station today." Yuna rolled her eyes. "So what? Military people come here all the time." "This one is different," Caillou said. "His name is Commander Vorix. He is famous. They say he trained the best soldiers in the entire galaxy. He is doing some kind of public show today." Tisu looked up from his food. He had heard stories about Commander Vorix. The commander was a Calothian, a species known for their large bodies and 4 eyes. Calothians were proud and aggressive. They believed they were better than everyone else. "Where is grandfather?" Tisu asked, looking around the shop. "He went to get parts from the lower level," Yuna answered. "He said he would be back in an hour." Their grandfather, Handiho, was 72 years old. He was a quiet man who rarely talked about himself. He had run this repair shop for as long as Tisu could remember. His hands were rough from years of hard work. His back was slightly bent. He looked like any other old human worker on the station. A loud noise came from outside. It sounded like cheering and shouting. Caillou jumped up immediately. "The commander must be here. Let us go see." Yuna did not look interested, but Tisu was curious. He put down his food and followed Caillou out of the shop. After a moment, Yuna sighed and came after them. The main plaza of the station was crowded. Hundreds of aliens had gathered in a large circle. In the center of the circle stood Commander Vorix and his soldiers. Vorix was huge. He was almost 8 feet tall, with dark green skin and 4 glowing yellow eyes. His body was covered in thick armor that shined under the station lights. Behind him stood 4 elite soldiers, each one almost as big as their commander. Vorix was speaking loudly, and his voice echoed through the plaza. "I am Commander Vorix, head trainer of the Imperial Military Academy. For 30 years, I have trained the finest warriors in this galaxy. My methods are perfect. My results are unmatched. There is no one alive who can challenge my skills as a trainer." The crowd watched in silence. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Others looked afraid. Vorix was known for his bad temper. Nobody wanted to make him angry. Vorix continued speaking. "I have trained soldiers from every powerful species. Calothians, Dromax, Velthari. The strongest races in the galaxy have sent their children to me, and I have made them into killing machines." He paused and looked around the crowd with his 4 eyes. His gaze stopped on a group of humans standing near the edge. "Of course, some species are not worth training," Vorix said with a cruel smile. "Humans, for example, soft bodies, weak bones, short lives. They break too easily. They are only good for cleaning floors and fixing toilets." Some aliens in the crowd laughed. The humans said nothing. They kept their heads down. They were used to this kind of treatment. Tisu felt anger rising in his chest. He thought about his grandfather, who had worked hard his entire life. He thought about his parents, who had died in a mining accident when he was young. He thought about all the humans on the station who worked harder than anyone else but got no respect. Vorax raised his arms wide. Is there anyone here who disagrees? Is there anyone who thinks they know a better trainer than me? Speak now if you dare. The plaza was silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. But then, before he could stop himself, Tisu stepped forward. My grandfather trained better soldiers than you ever did. The words came out of his mouth before his brain could catch up. Yuna grabbed his arm and tried to pull him back, but it was too late. Everyone in the plaza had heard him. Vorax turned slowly. His 4 eyes focused on Tisu like a predator looking at prey. What did you say, little human? Tisu's heart was beating fast. His legs felt weak, but something inside him refused to back down. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was stupidity, he did not know. I said my grandfather trained better soldiers than you. He trained the Emperor's personal guard, the Shadow Guard. He could teach you how to be a real trainer. The crowd gasped. The Shadow Guard were legendary. They were the Emperor's most elite protectors. Nobody knew who had trained them. It was one of the biggest secrets in the galaxy. Vorax stared at Tisu for a long moment. Then he started laughing. It was a deep, ugly sound that made Tisu's skin crawl. A human training the Shadow Guard. Vorax laughed harder. That is the funniest thing I have heard in years. What is next? Will you tell me that a human defeated the Dromex army? Will you say that a human invented faster-than-light travel? The crowd started laughing too. Tisu felt his face turn red with embarrassment. Yuna was squeezing his arm so hard it hurt. Tisu, stop talking, she whispered. You are going to get us killed. But Vorax was not done. He stopped laughing and walked toward Tisu. Each step made the ground shake slightly. The crowd moved away, leaving Tisu alone in front of the giant alien. You have a big mouth for such a small creature, Vorax said. His voice was no longer amused. It was cold and dangerous. Do you know what happens to liars in my army? Do you know what I do to people who insult me? Tisu wanted to run. Every part of his body told him to run, but his legs would not move. He stood frozen as Vorax leaned down, bringing his massive face close to Tisu's. I will give you one chance, little human. Take back your lie. Apologize to me in front of everyone, and maybe I will let you keep your teeth. Tisu swallowed hard. He looked at Yuna, who was begging him with her eyes to apologize. He looked at Caillou, who looked terrified. He looked at the crowd, who all expected him to back down. But then he thought about his grandfather. His grandfather never lied. His grandfather never boasted. If Tisu had heard the stories, they must be true. His grandfather had never told him directly, but Tisu had found old photos, old medals, old letters with the imperial seal. I am not lying, Tisu said quietly. My grandfather trained the Emperor's men, and he is a better trainer than you will ever be. The plaza fell completely silent. Even the machines seemed to stop humming. Everyone held their breath. Vorax's 4 eyes narrowed. The yellow glow in them became brighter. His massive hand curled into a fist. Then you have chosen pain, Vorax said. And in that moment, Tisu knew he had made a terrible mistake. Vorax did not hesitate. His massive green hand swung through the air like a hammer. The back of his fist connected with Tisu's face, and the boy flew backward like a broken toy. Tisu crashed into a merchant's stall. Boxes and products scattered everywhere. Metal containers rolled across the floor. The sound of the impact echoed through the silent plaza. For a moment, Tisu saw only darkness. Then pain exploded across his face. He could taste blood in his mouth. His vision was blurry and his ears were ringing. Tisu, Yuna screamed. She ran to her brother and dropped to her knees beside him. Tisu, can you hear me? Are you okay? Tisu tried to answer, but the words would not come out. He touched his face and felt something wet. When he looked at his hand, it was covered in blood. His lip was split open, and his cheek was already swelling. The crowd watched in shock. Some aliens looked away. Others whispered to each other. Striking a child was considered shameful in most cultures, even among the violent species. But nobody dared to say anything against Commander Vorix. Vorix walked toward the broken stall where Tisu lay. His heavy boots made loud sounds with each step. He looked down at the bleeding teenager with disgust in his 4 eyes. "This is what happens to liars," Vorix announced to the crowd. "This is what happens to those who insult the imperial military. Let this be a lesson to all of you, especially you worthless humans." Caillou was frozen in place. He wanted to help his friend, but fear kept him still. His whole body was shaking. He had never seen violence this close before. Yuna held her brother's head in her lap. Tears were running down her face, but her eyes were burning with anger. She looked up at Vorix with pure hatred. "He is just a boy," she shouted. "You are a monster." Vorix tilted his head and looked at her. A cruel smile appeared on his face. "Another human with a big mouth. Perhaps you want to join your brother on the ground." Yuna did not answer. She was too angry to speak. Her hands were shaking as she pressed a piece of cloth against Tisu's bleeding wound. One of Vorix's elite soldiers stepped forward. She was a young Calothian named Bira. Unlike her commander, she did not look pleased. Her 4 eyes showed something like shame. "Commander," Bira said quietly, "striking a minor is against the code of—" "Silence," Vorix roared. He turned to face his soldier with anger in his eyes. "Do not question me, trainee. I decide what is right and what is wrong. I am the law here." Bira lowered her head but said nothing more. The other soldiers looked uncomfortable too, but none of them dared to speak. Vorix turned back to Tisu, who was now sitting up with Yuna's help. The boy's face was a mess of blood and bruises, but his eyes were still defiant. "Now then," Vorix said loudly, "you claimed that your grandfather trained the Shadow Guard. This is a serious accusation. Either you are telling the truth, which would make your grandfather a person of great importance, or you are lying, which makes you guilty of slander against the imperial military." He paused and crossed his massive arms. "I will give you 1 hour. Bring this legendary grandfather of yours to this plaza. Let him prove your words. If you cannot do this, I will have you arrested. You will spend the next 10 years in a prison colony, mining rocks until your soft human body falls apart." Tisu's heart sank. 1 hour. His grandfather was somewhere in the lower levels of the station. It could take hours to find him. "That is not fair," Yuna protested. "We do not know exactly where he is." "Life is not fair, little girl," Vorix replied. "Your brother should have thought about that before opening his stupid mouth. The clock starts now." He turned and walked back to the center of the plaza, where his soldiers waited. The crowd slowly began to move again, but many people stayed to watch. They wanted to see what would happen next. Caillou finally unfroze and rushed to his friends. He helped Yuna lift Tisu to his feet. "I am sorry," Tisu mumbled. His words were slurred because of his swollen lip. "I should not have said anything. I was stupid." "Yes, you were stupid," Yuna said angrily, but then her voice softened. "But you are my stupid brother. We will fix this together." "How?" Tisu asked. "Grandfather could be anywhere. The lower levels are huge. We will never find him in time." Caillou looked around nervously. "I know some people who work in the lower levels. Maybe they have seen him. I can ask around quickly." "Do it," Yuna said. "Run as fast as you can. Find our grandfather and bring him here." Caillou nodded and took off running. He disappeared into the crowd within seconds. Yuna helped Tisu sit down on a bench near the plaza. She found some clean cloth from a nearby vendor and started cleaning his wound properly. The vendor, an old alien with 6 arms, did not ask for payment. He just nodded sadly at the injured boy. "Thank you," Yuna said to the vendor. Humans help humans, the vendor replied in broken language. He was not human, but he seemed to understand their situation. Big green one is bad, very bad, everyone knows. Tisu sat quietly while his sister worked on his face. The pain was getting worse, not better. His head was pounding, and his vision was still slightly blurry. "Do you really believe it?" Yuna asked softly. "About grandfather and the Shadow Guard?" Tisu nodded slowly. "I found things in his room once. Old photos of grandfather in military clothes, letters with the imperial seal, medals that I have never seen before. He never talked about it, but I know what I saw." Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Grandfather always told us to stay invisible, to not cause trouble, to keep our heads down. You just did the opposite of everything he taught us." "I know," Tisu admitted. "I could not help it. That alien was insulting all humans. He called us worthless. I could not just stand there and listen." "Pride is dangerous," Yuna said. "That is what grandfather always says." "He also says that some things are worth fighting for," Tisu replied. Yuna did not answer. She finished cleaning the wound and tied a bandage around her brother's head. It was not perfect, but it would stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Vorax was entertaining the crowd. He had his soldiers demonstrate fighting techniques. They moved with incredible speed and power, breaking metal targets and lifting heavy objects like they were nothing. "These are my warriors," Vorax boasted. "Trained by me, perfected by me. There is no force in this galaxy that can stand against them." The crowd cheered and clapped. Some aliens looked genuinely impressed. Others were just afraid to show any other reaction. Tisu watched the demonstration with mixed feelings. The soldiers were indeed powerful. They were fast, strong, and precise. But something about them seemed wrong. They moved like machines, not like living beings. There was no thought in their actions, no creativity. They just followed orders perfectly. His grandfather had once told him that the best warrior was not the strongest one. The best warrior was the one who could think, the one who could adapt, the one who could find a way to win even when everything seemed impossible. 30 minutes passed. Caillou had not returned. Tisu started to lose hope. "What if Caillou cannot find him?" he whispered to Yuna. "What if grandfather does not come?" "Then we run," Yuna said firmly. "We get on the first ship leaving this station and we disappear. I am not letting them take you to prison." Tisu shook his head. "If we run, they will hunt us forever. We will never be safe." "Better than dying in a mine," Yuna replied. 40 minutes passed. The crowd was getting restless. Vorax checked the time on his wrist device and smiled. 20 minutes left," he announced loudly. "Where is this legendary grandfather? Perhaps he is too scared to face me. Perhaps he knows that his grandson told lies." The crowd laughed. Some aliens pointed at Tisu and made jokes. Tisu kept his head down and tried to ignore them. Then at 42 minutes, something changed. The crowd near the east entrance started to move. People stepped aside, making way for someone. Whispers spread through the plaza. "It is him," someone said. "The old human from the repair shop." Tisu looked up. His heart jumped. Walking slowly through the crowd was his grandfather. Handiho wore his usual work clothes, stained with oil and grease. His gray hair was messy. His back was slightly bent. He walked with a small limp from an old injury. He looked like exactly what he appeared to be, a tired old mechanic who had spent his life fixing broken machines. But Tisu noticed something different about him, something in the way he walked, something in the way his eyes scanned the crowd, something cold and sharp that Tisu had never seen before. Grandfather had heard what happened, and he was not happy. Handiho walked through the crowd like water flowing through rocks. People moved out of his way without thinking. There was something in his presence that made them step aside, even though he looked like nothing special. Caillou followed behind him, breathing heavily from running. He had found the old man in the deepest part of the lower levels, fixing an old generator. When Caillou had explained what happened, Di-Ho had put down his tools without a word and started walking. He had not spoken the entire way up. His silence was more frightening than any angry words could be. Vorax noticed the movement in the crowd. He turned and saw the old human approaching. For a moment, he just stared. Then he burst into loud, ugly laughter. "This," Vorax shouted, pointing at Di-Ho, "this is the legendary trainer, this old, dirty, broken-down fossil." The crowd laughed with him. Some aliens made comments about Di-Ho's appearance, his oil-stained clothes, his thin gray hair, his wrinkled face. He looked like someone's forgotten grandfather, not a warrior who had trained emperors. Di-Ho ignored the laughter. He walked straight to where Tissue and Yuna were sitting. He knelt down slowly, his old knees making a soft cracking sound, and looked at his grandson's face. Tissue could not meet his grandfather's eyes. "I am sorry, grandfather. I should not have spoken. I caused trouble for everyone." Di-Ho did not answer immediately. He gently touched the bandage on Tissue's head. He examined the swelling on his cheek. He looked at the dried blood on his shirt. Then he turned and looked at Vorax. The laughter in the plaza slowly died down. Something had changed in the air. The aliens nearest to Di-Ho took a step back without knowing why. They felt something cold pass over them, like a shadow blocking out the sun. Di-Ho stood up. His movements were slow and calm, but there was no weakness in them. Every motion was controlled, precise, deliberate. "You struck my grandson," Di-Ho said. His voice was not loud. He did not shout or scream, but somehow everyone in the plaza heard him clearly. The words seemed to cut through the noise like a blade through cloth. Vorax stopped laughing. He looked at the old human with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "Yes, I struck him. He told lies and insulted me. He deserved far worse than a single slap. If he were one of my soldiers, he would be dead by now." "He is not your soldier," Di-Ho replied. "He is my grandson." "And who are you supposed to be?" Vorax asked mockingly. "Some retired human worker, some grease-covered nobody who thinks he is important because his foolish grandchild told stupid stories." Di-Ho did not answer the question. Instead, he took a step forward. Just one step. But that single step made Vorax's 4 elite soldiers tense up. Their hands moved toward their weapons automatically. "Your soldiers are nervous," Di-Ho observed. "Good instincts, bad training." Vorax's eyes narrowed. The mockery in his expression faded slightly. He did not like the way this old human was talking to him. "Bad training. My soldiers are the finest in the galaxy. Each one of them could kill 100 humans without breaking a sweat." Di-Ho shook his head slowly. "They stand wrong. Their weight is on the wrong foot. Their reaction time is 2 seconds slower than it should be, and they telegraph their movements before they act. Any skilled fighter could read them like a book." The 4 elite soldiers exchanged glances. They did not understand what the old man was talking about. They had trained for years. They had passed every test. They were the best of the best. Vorax's face turned dark green with anger. This was the Calothian equivalent of turning red. "Enough of this nonsense," he growled. "I do not know what game you are playing, old man, but I am done being patient. Guards, restrain this human and his grandchildren. They will all face punishment for wasting my time." The 4 elite soldiers moved forward. They were fast, much faster than any human could normally react. Their heavy boots pounded against the metal floor as they surrounded Di-Ho. What happened next would be talked about on this station for generations. The first soldier reached out to grab Di-Ho's arm, but Di-Ho was no longer there. He had shifted his body just slightly, just a few inches, but it was enough. The soldier's hand grabbed empty air. Before the soldier could react, Di-Ho's fingers touched a spot on the soldier's neck. It was a gentle touch, almost like a pat, but the soldier's entire body went stiff. His eyes rolled back and he collapsed to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The second soldier swung a fist at Deho's head. It was a powerful blow that could have broken concrete, but Deho ducked under it smoothly and pressed 2 fingers against the soldier's side, just below the ribs. The soldier made a choking sound and fell, unable to move his legs. The third and fourth soldiers attacked together. They had learned from watching their friends fall. They came from opposite directions, trying to trap the old man between them. Deho moved like smoke. He was there one moment and somewhere else the next. His hands flashed out twice, touching pressure points that no one else could see. Both soldiers dropped to the ground within the same second. 3 seconds. That was all it took. 4 elite warriors, each one trained for decades, defeated in 3 seconds by an old man in dirty work clothes. Deho had not even moved from his original spot. His breathing was calm. His expression was unchanged. He looked like he had done nothing more tiring than picking up a dropped tool. The plaza was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the machines and announcement systems seemed to have gone quiet. Vorik stared at his fallen soldiers with wide eyes. All 4 of them were still conscious but unable to move. They lay on the ground, their bodies completely frozen, their faces showing confusion and fear. "They will recover in about 10 minutes, Deho said calmly. "I only paralyzed their motor functions. No permanent damage." He looked directly at Vorik. The cold sharpness in his eyes had grown even stronger. "That was a warning. The next touch will not be so gentle." Vorik took a step backward. It was an instinctive reaction, something his body did before his mind could stop it. He, the mighty commander of the Imperial Military Academy, had stepped back from an old human mechanic. Shame and rage flooded through him. He was a Calothian warrior. He had fought in 12 major battles. He had killed enemies with his bare hands. He would not be intimidated by some ancient human. "What trick is this?" Vorik demanded. "What weapon are you using? This is impossible. Humans cannot move like that." "No weapon," Deho replied. "Just knowledge. Knowledge that I gained over 50 years of training and combat. Knowledge that you clearly do not have." "You are lying," Vorik shouted. "No human has ever possessed such skills. Your species is weak. Your bodies are fragile. You are nothing compared to Calothians." Deho looked at him with something like pity. "That is your biggest mistake, Commander. You judge strength by muscle and size, but true strength comes from understanding, from patience, from knowing exactly where and when to apply pressure." He gestured toward the fallen soldiers. "Your warriors are strong. They can lift heavy things and run fast, but they do not understand the body. They do not know the 10,000 nerve points that control movement. They do not know how to disable an enemy without causing harm. They are hammers when they should be scalpels." The crowd watched in amazement. Many of them had never seen anything like this. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to be prey. But this human, this old and tired-looking human, had just defeated 4 elite warriors without even trying. Yuna held her brother's hand tightly. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "Did you know?" she whispered. "Did you know grandfather could do this?" Tisu shook his head slowly. "I knew he was strong, I knew he had secrets, but this, I never imagined this." Caillou stood behind them, his mouth hanging open. He had known grandfather Deho for years. He had watched the old man fix engines and repair broken machines. He had shared meals with him. He had thought he knew everything about the old mechanic. He had known nothing. Beera, the young Calothian soldier who had questioned Vorik earlier, pushed herself up from the ground. She was the first to recover her movement. Her 4 eyes focused on Deho with something like wonder. "The touch points," she whispered. "I have heard legends about this. The old martial arts, the ways of pressure and flow, I thought they were just myths." Deho glanced at her. "Not myths, just forgotten. Most species prefer weapons and technology now. They have forgotten what the body can do when properly trained. He turned back to Vorax, who was still standing frozen in place. Now then, Commander, shall we continue this discussion, or would you like to apologize to my grandson and leave this station peacefully? Vorax's face twisted with rage. Being defeated was bad enough. Being offered mercy was worse. He would rather die than accept pity from a human. This is not over, he growled. I am calling for station security. I am calling for reinforcements. You have assaulted Imperial soldiers. You will pay for this with your life. Diho sighed. He looked genuinely tired for the first time. I had hoped it would not come to this, he said quietly. I had hoped I could stay forgotten. Before Vorax could respond, a bright light appeared in the center of the plaza. It was a holographic transmission, the kind that only very important people used. And when the image became clear, everyone in the plaza fell to their knees in shock. Everyone except Diho. He just stood there, looking at the hologram with the expression of a man seeing an old friend after many years. The hologram showed a figure that every being in the galaxy knew. Emperor Joreth IV sat on his ancient throne, his massive reptilian body covered in ceremonial armor. His scales were dark purple, marked with golden lines that showed his royal bloodline. His eyes, vertical slits of burning orange, looked out across the plaza. Every alien in the crowd dropped to their knees. This was the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. To stand in his presence, even a holographic one, was unthinkable. Vorax fell to his knees so fast that he hurt himself. His 4 eyes were wide with terror. Why was the Emperor here? Why was he watching? How much had he seen? Yuna pulled Tisu down with her. They knelt together, their heads bowed low. Caillou was already on the ground, trembling with fear and amazement. Only Diho remained standing. The crowd noticed this immediately. Whispers spread through the plaza. Did this old human not know who he was looking at? Was he insane? Did he want to be executed for disrespecting the Emperor? But the Emperor did not look angry. Instead, something strange happened. The ancient reptilian ruler slightly lowered his head. It was not a full bow, but it was close enough. Master Han, the Emperor said. His voice was deep and rumbling like thunder from far away. It has been 40 years. Master Han. The crowd heard these words and did not understand them. The Emperor was calling this dirty old mechanic by a title of respect. Diho nodded once. 40 years, 2 months, and 11 days, Your Majesty. I am glad to see you are well. I am old, the Emperor replied, but I am still alive, thanks in large part to the training you gave me. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. People looked at each other with confusion. What was happening? What connection did the Emperor have with this human? Vorax lifted his head slightly. His mind was racing, trying to understand the situation. The Emperor knew this human. The Emperor showed him respect. This was impossible. This had to be some kind of trick. Your Majesty, Vorax said, his voice shaking, I do not understand. This human claimed that his grandson's grandfather trained the Imperial forces. I assumed it was a lie. I was defending the honor of the military. The Emperor's orange eyes moved to Vorax. The commander felt like he was being examined by a predator deciding whether to eat him. You assumed, the Emperor repeated. You did not investigate. You did not ask questions. You simply struck a child and demanded proof. I was maintaining discipline, Your Majesty. The boy was disrespectful. He was telling the truth, the Emperor interrupted. Every word he said was true, and you, Commander Vorax, have made a very serious mistake. The Emperor turned his attention back to Diho. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. There was something almost like affection in it. I have been monitoring communications across my empire for many years. When I heard reports of a disturbance involving a human mechanic and claims about the Shadow Guard, I decided to watch personally. I needed to see if it was truly you. Diho smiled slightly. It was the first time he had shown any emotion since arriving at the plaza. I asked you to forget me, Your Majesty. I asked to be left alone. I honored your request, the emperor replied. For 40 years I told no one about you. I removed all records of your service. I let you disappear into the common population as you wished. But I never forgot you, Master Han. How could I forget the man who made me what I am? The crowd listened in stunned silence. The emperor was speaking to this old human like a student speaking to a beloved teacher. Let me tell them, the emperor continued. Let me tell them who you really are. You have hidden long enough, old friend. Diho was quiet for a moment. He looked at Tisu and Yuna, still kneeling on the ground. He looked at the crowd of aliens who had mocked humans for years. He looked at Vorax, whose face showed pure terror. Very well, Diho said finally. Perhaps it is time. The emperor nodded and turned to address the entire plaza. His holographic image grew larger, filling the space above the crowd. Listen well, all of you. What I am about to tell you is the truth. The truth about Han Diho, the truth about humanity, the truth about the Shadow Guard. Every being in the plaza held their breath. 50 years ago, I was not an emperor. I was a young prince, seventh in line for the throne. My chances of ruling were almost zero. My older brothers were stronger, smarter, more respected. I was considered the weakest of my father's children. The emperor paused, his ancient eyes lost in memory. Then my father made a decision that changed my life. He hired a human to train me, not a Calothian, not a Dromax, a human. Everyone thought he was insane. Humans were considered the weakest species in the galaxy. What could a human teach a prince? He looked at Diho with deep respect. Everything. Han Diho taught me everything, not just combat. He taught me strategy. He taught me patience. He taught me how to read people. He taught me that true power comes not from muscles but from the mind. He taught me that the smallest creature can defeat the largest if it knows where to strike. The crowd was completely silent. They had never heard the emperor speak like this. For 15 years, Master Han trained me in secret. He turned me from the weakest prince into a warrior that my brothers feared. When the War of Succession came, I defeated all 6 of my older brothers in single combat. Not because I was the strongest, because I was the smartest, because I had been taught by the greatest trainer the galaxy has ever known. Vorax's face had gone pale green. He looked like he might be sick. After I became emperor, I asked Master Han to train my personal guard, the Shadow Guard. For another 15 years, he worked in the shadows, creating the deadliest warriors in existence. When he finished, he asked for only one reward: to be forgotten, to return to a normal life, to raise his family in peace. The emperor's voice became heavy with emotion. I gave him what he asked. I erased his records. I removed his name from history. I let him become a simple mechanic on a station far from the capital. I thought I was honoring his wish. He looked directly at Vorax, and his eyes burned with cold fire. But today, Commander Vorax, you struck his grandson. You drew blood from the family of the man who made me emperor. You insulted the greatest warrior and trainer in our history. You called humans weak and worthless, when a human created the very military force you claim to lead. Vorax was shaking so badly that he could barely stay on his knees. Tears of fear were running down his face. Your Majesty, I did not know. I could not have known. Please have mercy, I was only. You were only arrogant, the emperor cut him off. You were only cruel. You were only a bully who enjoyed hurting those weaker than yourself. And that is exactly why you failed as a trainer. That is why your soldiers fell in 3 seconds against an old man you called worthless. The emperor's image flickered slightly as he leaned forward on his throne. True strength is not about power, Commander. It is about wisdom. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. Master Han understood this. You never did. Diho stepped forward slightly. "Your Majesty, if I may speak." The Emperor nodded respectfully. "Of course, Master Han, this is your moment." "I do not want revenge," Diho said quietly. "Revenge is for the weak. I only want two things. First, I want Commander Vorix to apologize to my grandson, not to me, to the boy he struck." Vorix looked up. His eyes met Tisu's bruised face. For a long moment he struggled with his pride. Then he crawled forward on his knees until he was in front of Tisu. I apologize," Vorix said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "I was wrong to strike you. I was wrong to call you a liar. Please, forgive me." Tisu stared at the alien who had seemed so terrifying just an hour ago. Now Vorix looked small, broken, pathetic. "I forgive you," Tisu said quietly. Yuna squeezed her brother's hand. She was proud of him, not for speaking up earlier but for showing mercy now. "And the second thing?" the Emperor asked Diho. Diho looked at Vorix with calm, steady eyes. "Commander Vorix needs to be retrained. His methods are flawed. His philosophy is corrupt. He creates warriors who are strong but not wise. This is dangerous. If he continues teaching, he will produce soldiers who are nothing more than weapons without conscience." The Emperor nodded slowly. "What do you propose?" "Let him spend 1 year training under me, not as a commander, as a student. Let him learn what true strength means. Let him discover that the species he called weak have more to offer than he ever imagined." Vorix's eyes widened with horror. Spent a year being trained by a human, being treated as a student by the creature he had considered inferior. It was a fate worse than death. But the alternative was clear in the Emperor's eyes. Accept the training, or face execution for insulting the imperial legacy. I accept," Vorix whispered. "I will train under Master Han." The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then it is decided. Commander Vorix will be stripped of his rank temporarily. He will serve as a student under Master Han for 1 full year. If he completes the training successfully, he may return to his position. If not—" He did not need to finish the sentence. "And as for the humans of this station," the Emperor continued, "let it be known throughout my empire, humanity is not weak. They are not lesser. Among them walk legends, hidden warriors, teachers who shape the very foundation of our military power. Treat them with the respect they deserve or face my judgment." The holographic image began to fade. "Master Han," the Emperor said as his image grew dim, "it was good to see you again, old friend. Perhaps one day you will visit the capital. My throne room feels empty without your wisdom." Diho bowed his head slightly. "Perhaps one day, Your Majesty, but for now I have grandchildren to raise, and apparently a new student to train." The Emperor laughed. It was a deep, warm sound that echoed across the plaza. "May the stars guide your path, Master Han, and may they have mercy on Commander Vorix." The hologram disappeared, leaving the plaza in stunned silence. For a long moment after the Emperor's hologram faded, nobody in the plaza moved or spoke. It was as if the entire station had frozen in time. Then, slowly, reality began to return. The 4 elite soldiers finally regained control of their bodies. They pushed themselves up from the ground, their movements shaky and uncertain. They looked at their commander, who was still on his knees before a teenage human boy. They looked at the old mechanic who had defeated them without effort. They did not know what to think. Beera, the young Calothian who had questioned Vorix earlier, was the first to act. She walked slowly toward Diho and lowered herself to one knee, placing her fist over her heart in the traditional gesture of respect. "Master Han," she said, her 4 eyes showing genuine admiration, "I have trained my whole life to become a warrior. I thought I had reached the peak of my abilities. Now I see I know nothing. Would you consider accepting another student?" The other soldiers watched in shock. Beera was asking to be trained by a human. Beera, who came from one of the proudest Calothian families. Beera, who had won every competition at the academy. She was kneeling before a species she had been taught to look down on. Di-ho studied her for a moment. His eyes seemed to look right through her, examining something that ordinary people could not see. "You have good bones," he said finally, "strong foundation, but your spirit is clouded by pride and old beliefs. Are you willing to unlearn everything you think you know?" Bira nodded without hesitation. "I am willing, master." "Then come to my shop tomorrow at sunrise. We will begin with the basics." Bira's face lit up with joy. She bowed deeply and stepped back. The crowd began to disperse slowly. Many aliens left quickly, not wanting to be associated with the humiliation of Commander Vorix. Others lingered, watching the old human mechanic with new eyes. The whispers that spread through the station were different now. They spoke of respect, of fear, of wonder. Di-ho walked back to his grandchildren. Tisu and Yuna had finally risen from their knees, and Caillou stood behind them, still looking stunned. "Grandfather," Tisu said, "I am sorry. I caused so much trouble. I revealed your secret to the whole galaxy. You wanted to be forgotten, and now—" Di-ho raised his hand gently, stopping the apology. "You spoke the truth," he said. "There is no shame in that. I was hiding for too long. Perhaps it was time for the truth to come out." He reached out and touched the bandage on Tisu's face. His eyes softened with concern. "Does it hurt?" Tisu shrugged. "A little. It looks worse than it feels." "We will go to the medical center," Di-ho said. "Then we will go home. I think we all need some rest." Yuna stepped forward and hugged her grandfather tightly. She had always known he was special, but she had never imagined this. He hugged her back, his old arms still surprisingly strong. "Grandfather," she whispered, "why did you never tell us? Why did you hide who you really were?" Di-ho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft with memory. "Because I wanted you to grow up normal. I wanted you to have a simple life. Fame and power bring enemies. They bring expectations. They bring burdens that children should never have to carry." He released Yuna and looked at both his grandchildren. "Your parents were my children. They chose a normal life too. They worked in the mines, honest work for honest pay, when they died in that accident." His voice cracked slightly. It was the first time Tisu had ever seen his grandfather show such emotion. "When they died, I promised myself I would protect you. I would keep you safe. I would give you the peaceful life that they wanted for you. That meant staying invisible. That meant being nobody important." Tisu understood now. His grandfather had sacrificed his legacy, his recognition, his place in history, all to protect two orphaned children. He had given up everything to be a simple grandfather. "But now," Tisu asked, "now everyone knows who you are. What happens now?" Di-ho smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was warmth in it. "Now things will be different, but different is not always bad. Perhaps it is time for me to stop hiding. Perhaps it is time for humans to stop hiding." He looked around at the few aliens still watching from a distance. Some of them quickly looked away. Others nodded with respect. "For too long, our people have accepted being treated as lesser beings. We kept our heads down. We took the bad jobs and the poor treatment. We told ourselves that survival was more important than dignity." Di-ho straightened his back, and for a moment he did not look like an old man at all. He looked like the warrior he had always been. "But we are not lesser. We are not weak. We have our own strengths, our own gifts, our own legends." Today, the galaxy was reminded of that truth. Vorix still knelt in the plaza, alone and humiliated. His soldiers had left him. His reputation was destroyed. Everything he had built over 30 years was gone. Di-ho walked over to him. The massive Calothian flinched when the old human approached. "Stand up," Di-ho said. "Kneeling all day will not help you learn anything." Vorix hesitated, then slowly rose to his feet. He towered over Di-ho, but somehow the human seemed larger. The first lesson, Di-Ho said, is that strength means nothing if you use it against those weaker than you. A true warrior protects the weak. He does not prey on them. Vorik said nothing. His 4 eyes were focused on the ground. The second lesson is that every species has value. Every culture has something to teach. The galaxy is not a pyramid with powerful races at the top and weak races at the bottom. It is a tapestry, and every thread matters. He paused, letting the words sink in. The third lesson is that family is worth more than all the glory in the universe. I came out of retirement today because someone hurt my grandson. I would do it again 1,000 times without hesitation. Di-Ho started walking away, then stopped and looked back. Come to my shop tomorrow morning. We will begin your training, and Commander, wear simple clothes. You will be cleaning floors and fixing machines for the first month. That is where all my students start. Vorix's face twisted with humiliation, but he nodded slowly. Yes, Master Han. Di-Ho returned to his grandchildren. He put one arm around Ti-Su and one around Yuna. Let us go home, he said. I will make dinner tonight, something special. Grandfather never cooks, Yuna said with surprise. I used to cook for emperors, Di-Ho replied with a small smile. I think I can manage dinner for my grandchildren. As they walked toward the exit, Caillou hurried to catch up with them. Sir, I mean Master Han. I have known you for years. I had no idea. I always knew you were cool, but this is. Di-Ho laughed softly. I am still the same person, Caillou. I still fix engines. I still complain about my back pain. I still lose at chess against Ti-Su. Fame does not change who we are inside. They left the plaza behind. The station was buzzing with the news of what had happened. Humans walked with their heads a little higher. Aliens looked at them with new curiosity and respect. Bira caught up with them just before they reached the residential section. She bowed to Di-Ho again. Master, I forgot to ask, what should I bring tomorrow? Weapons, training gear. Di-Ho shook his head. Bring nothing but yourself and an open mind. The first year we do not touch weapons. We learn to understand ourselves. We learn to breathe. We learn to see. Bira looked confused but nodded. I understand, Master. I will be there at sunrise. She hurried away, already excited about her new path. Ti-Su watched her go. She seems nice for a Calothian. She has potential, Di-Ho agreed. More than her former commander ever had. Some people are born with the capacity to grow. Others are trapped by their own pride. Vorix will be a difficult student, but Bira could become something special. They reached their small apartment. It was modest, with only 3 rooms and a tiny kitchen. The walls were decorated with old photos and simple artwork that Ti-Su and Yuna had made as children. Di-Ho sat down in his favorite chair with a heavy sigh. For the first time since the plaza, he looked his age. The events of the day had taken more out of him than he had shown. Grandfather, are you okay? Yuna asked with concern. I am tired, Di-Ho admitted. I am not as young as I used to be. Moving the way I did today, my body will complain tomorrow. Ti-Su sat down next to him. Grandfather, can you teach me too what you did today? The way you moved, the way you touched those soldiers and they just fell. I want to learn. Di-Ho studied his grandson for a long moment. It would take many years, decades. It would be the hardest thing you have ever done. I want to try, Ti-Su said firmly. I want to become strong like you, not to hurt people, but to protect them, to protect Yuna, to protect the humans on this station who cannot protect themselves. Di-Ho's eyes grew warm, pride shone in them. That is the right reason to seek strength. Very well, we will begin your training as well, but you must continue your regular work at the shop. You must continue your studies. The path of a warrior does not excuse you from the duties of normal life. I understand, Grandfather. Yuna crossed her arms. What about me? Do I get to learn too? Di-Ho smiled at her. You have a different strength, Yuna. Your tongue is sharper than any blade. Your mind sees things that others miss. I will teach you the art of observation, the art of reading people, the art of winning battles before they even begin." Yuna grinned. "That sounds more my style." They spent the evening together, eating the special dinner that Diho prepared. It was delicious, far better than anything he had ever made before. The old man told stories from his past, tales of training young soldiers and serving in the emperor's palace. He spoke of battles won and friends lost. He spoke of the decision to leave it all behind and become nobody. Late that night, after the children had gone to bed, Diho sat alone by the window. He looked out at the stars, millions of them shining in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, word of today's events was spreading. Ships carried the story from system to system. Humans across the galaxy would hear about the old mechanic who humbled a military commander and earned the Emperor's respect. Things would change now. Humans would start to stand taller. They would demand better treatment. Some would be inspired to seek strength. Others would abuse their new reputation. But that was the nature of change. It was neither good nor bad. It simply was. Diho smiled and closed his eyes. He had spent 40 years hiding, protecting his family, staying invisible. It had been a good life, a peaceful life. But perhaps there was still work to be done. Perhaps one old mechanic could still make a difference. Tomorrow he would start teaching again. A humbled commander, an eager young Calothian, his own grandchildren. The galaxy would learn that humans were not weak. And Han Diho, the forgotten master, would show them exactly what humanity could become.